Highguard is an enigma of a game. With its reveal at the Game Awards, we were shown a trailer for a brand new game from past developers of games like Apex Legends and Titanfall. This game was supposed to be a, quote, new breed of FPS, the likes we've never seen before. The trailer immediately drew the ire of many in the gaming community, not only because of the way the game looked, but also because of when it was revealed at the award show. For those that don't know, right before they announce Game of the Year, the Game Awards almost always has some sort of a massive announcement. This year, well, I guess last year, it was Highguard. Highguard, looking the way it did, in a spot so coveted, really brought out the riffraff. I went into playing Highguard with an open mind. I want it to be a successful game that people like, because I want that for all games. However, for me, it just ain't it. If you like Highguard, then great, go play it. Go enjoy it. My goal is to give as much of a balanced take on the game as possible while giving good, honest criticism without it sounding like I'm just mad about stuff because, you know, I want to be mad. However, I will still heavily scrutinize this game because of the hype that people like Jeff Keighley and other content creators put out there. No, Jeff, I'm not apologizing. Is this Concord 2? What is Highguard? Does it even exist? Those are all things that people have asked. If you're even the slightest bit interested in Highguard, please go try it out. It's free. You're not missing out on anything other than the download time and space. And it's only like 20 gigs or something. It's pretty small, actually. Okay, so let's get into the review. I played about 6 hours of Highguard. I was going to shoot for 10, but I simply couldn't bear to do another 4. I will say that a large majority of what I predicted in the last video came true, but it turns out that no matter how much I predicted the game, I could not have predicted how mundane it really is. As I normally do with my reviews, I'm going to break the game down into 3 categories: the good, the bad, and the in-between. Timestamps down below if you want to jump to any of those sections. It should also be mentioned that, obviously, I am reviewing the game in the state that it launched in, not the state that it could be in a few months from now once more content is added. Some people think that's how reviews should work. They're wrong, but let me explain what Highguard actually is. Highguard is an amalgamation of multiple games that have had some weird incestuous orgy and then gave birth to some back alley abortion of a child. This mode has been scraped out the womb of its mother sister and plopped onto the Steam store page for all to feast upon. What the fuck? Okay, look, okay. It's hyperbolic, it's a bit harsh. It's not really that bad of a game mode. A mode? Oh, yes. A single mode, because that's all that Highguard is at the moment. The mode is a 3v3 raid mode, and I think the best way to describe it is to talk about the actual gameplay loop. When the match starts, you are introduced to the character selection. There are 8 wardens to choose from, with each having their own sets of abilities that range from more assault-focused abilities to more defensive/support abilities, and there are also some utilitarian abilities. After you choose your character, you will choose your base. Everyone will vote on a base layout and design. Each base has its own strengths and weaknesses in terms of their layouts and features. After this, you'll load into the game at the base you just chose. The game takes place in multiple phases, and in this phase, it's all about reinforcing the walls of your base. Inside of your and your enemy's bases are 3 cores. 2 of these cores, listed as A and B, are the side cores, with the 3rd core, the anchor core, being the main core of your base. At the top of the screen are 2 sets of health bars. These bars are the overall health of your base. Within this opening phase, it's all about reinforcing the walls, windows, and doors of the buildings that shelter your cores. Reinforcing these wooden panels ensures that enemies can't just use their axes to chop through the walls easily. Over the top of your entire base is an energy dome. This dome will split open after a little bit, allowing you to leave and explore the large maps. In this phase, you'll be exploring for a little while and gathering loot. Looting basically boils down to looting chests. Blue chests are support chests containing things like shields and helmets, among other items, and red chests are usually filled with weapon-based items. There's a currency in the game called Vesper that can be obtained by mining blue crystals that are dotted all over the map. This currency can be taken to a vendor who has a list of different items that you can buy and equip. You can also get Vesper from kills. There's also a side objective that shows up that's a supply drop. A box is parachuted in by a dropship and teams can fight for the loot inside. You don't have to get the supply drop, but there is usually some good loot in there. After this phase ends, you'll be told that the shield breaker is about to spawn. This is a blue sword that slowly raises out of the ground in a very specific area of the map. Teams will fight over the sword because in order to go to the next phase of the game, someone must pick it up. The next phase is for one of the teams to take the shield breaker to the other team's energy dome shield. Whoever has picked up the shield breaker can be seen at all times, meaning that if you don't have the sword, you can see who does. Teams will fight in the open areas of the maps to try and keep the wielder of the sword from reaching their objective. If a team successfully takes the shield breaker to the enemy's shield, then they can go into the raid portion of the game. If no team successfully takes a shield breaker to a shield in the time period, you'll go into overtime where everyone only has one life. If time runs out in overtime, then whichever side the shield breaker is closest to will be raided. Once the raid phase begins, attackers call in a siege tower that breaks open the enemy dome, and they must infiltrate the enemy base and plant bombs on points A, B, and the anchor core. Bombs take around 45 seconds to go off, and defenders can disarm them. Attackers only have a certain number of lives, so they need to be efficient. If they can destroy the enemy's main core, then they win the game. If the attackers aren't successful, then the raid fails, and the looting and shield breaker phases begin again. As each raid occurs, the team that gets hit by the siege tower will take damage to their base's overall health. They'll also lose health if they lose a core, and they will completely lose all health if the main core is destroyed. The main core doesn't need to be destroyed in order to win the game, but if you are good enough to get to it and blow it up, you could win very quickly by bypassing A and B. And that's it. That's the main loop of the game. Some games are longer than others depending on how good each team is, but with that relatively complicated explanation out of the way, let's get into my review by talking about... I don't want to come off as a hater when I say that, for me, I don't think there's a lot of good in Highguard. Let's start off by saying that the best thing about Highguard is that the game is free. That absolutely needs to be stated before I go forward. I'm going to give my unfiltered opinion on this title, but remember, it's free, so as much as I may like or dislike it, as much as I may go off into the weeds about it, I didn't lose out on anything other than my time. I'm completely fine with that because I wanted to try the game out. If this had been $40, I never would have played this, and I think that people would have been pissed by that price tag, considering what's on offer. I do think that the gunplay is pretty good. Most of the weapons felt nice to use with enough actual recoil to make sure that they didn't become insane and reach far outside of the ranges that they should be in. I didn't get a ton of hands-on time with each weapon, but they were pretty decent overall, and it seems like there is something here for many different play styles. It's overall fast and arcadey shooting that feels pretty good. If you're a fan of Apex Legends or Titanfall, you'll find yourself in some fairly familiar grounds. Personally, I was more of a fan of Titanfall than Apex for multiple reasons, but to each their own. One thing I like about the weapons is that there are no attachments for them, so you aren't having to min-max or search for optics or anything of the sort. Some people might like this in games like Apex, but personally I've never really cared for it. Once again, I was never a big fan of Apex. However, some weapons do have the ability to add an optical zoom to them. If you ADS and press your sprint key while zoom, your character will put a new optic on the gun. The guns that do this usually have a default option for iron sights or a 1x zoom, and then when you put the optic on, it usually brings it up to like a 3x zoom. I will say that the only downside to this is that if you like a certain type of optic or a reticle, then there's no real customization for that, so there is a trade-off here. Movement was pretty decent as well. I'm not some extreme movement buff like some people are, but basic movement felt fine. You can slide and bunny hop and stuff, and I've already seen the movement sweats going crazy with this game. The mounts felt alright to use as well. I didn't really use them in combat much, mostly to traverse the map, but they're alright. And lastly, the maps are nice. There are 5 maps at launch, and I wouldn't say there's any one that I particularly hated. I wouldn't say there's any that I particularly loved either, but it's not like I despised any of them. So that's good for them, I guess. There's a variety of biomes, and the maps also change a bit based upon which base you chose at the beginning of the game. There's a lot that I don't like about Highguard. First of all, that trailer was horrendous. It was slow moving with lots of action that had zero results. It did a disservice to the game because the way the trailer was played, it's nothing like how the actual game is played. People need to stop making trailers like this. Concord did it as well. The game does move a good deal faster than what the trailer shows. I did guess correctly that Highguard might be a 3v3 game in my prediction video. While it is only 3v3, there is a lot of fast moving action to be had, but in bursts. See, what the trailer didn't show was the looting phase of the game or the size of the maps. Why is this a big deal? Well, these maps are pretty big. There's a reason they give you the mounts, because you'll need the speed to move around these large areas. The problem is that other than the loot and crystals, there's nothing else on the maps. There's no wildlife, and there's only one other side objective to do with the supply drop. This makes the maps feel barren and empty when you aren't fighting other people. Make no mistake, the looting phase is clearly inspired by battle royales, most likely Apex. However, the difference between a battle royale and this is that you usually have 94 other people on the map with you. So instead of running into each other and fighting, the looting portion is a slow slog at the beginning and the middle of the round that really killed all momentum for me if the raid phase failed and then we looped back to the looting phase to start it all over again. The raid phase and the shield breaker phase were fine. They're full of action and movement, but the looting phase sucks. For me, the least interesting part of the battle royale experience is the looting phase of the game. I know some people are going to protest me in saying this because, well, actually looting is great because it gives you time to prepare and get ready. I like the phase after I get the loot, shooting enemies with it. I've tried to stay away from other reviews so I don't influence my thoughts on Highguard, but I did see some people mentioning upping the player count to 5v5 or making the game 3v3v3. And while 5v5 might work or 6v6 might work, I don't think 3v3 would. People already complain about getting third-partied in battle royales as it is, and adding another team would make the game a third-party simulator. And also, what would the third team do when one team is getting raided? Just sit there and watch? Cheer on the attackers or defenders? They couldn't join in because 6v3 would suck. The other problem with a 3v3 game is that if one person plays like crap or leaves, you're at a huge disadvantage. We've all played BR trios and had that one guy that sucked and it just ruined the whole round. Add to that, the game is free, which invites all sorts of lovely toxic people who are willing to rip your throat out in a game that no one knows how to play because it's day one. Chill, take a break, order some DoorDash, pay someone to love you because that's the only way anyone will. I don't care. Stop yelling at me because I played like garbage in one game.
Stop that bomb now!
Yeah, Bubba, you're trash, bro. Please just uninstall the game. Save it and play with you.
Solo queuing sucks, by the way. All that to say, there is a lovely mute team function that's pretty great. Also, I couldn't find any text chat in the game. I might be wrong on that one. I don't think there is. My original thought was that this was going to be more along the lines of a MOBA. I envisioned there being like little enemy mobs on the map that you could kill or something, and personally, I think that works better than mining for crystals. It at least lets you shoot your gun while looking for stuff and adds a little life to the world. The worst part is that there's this little timing mini game that will let you mine faster. You have to click your mining button at the right time and you'll mine the crystal faster. If not, you'll go slower or straight up even stop mining. If you get a perfect run of clicks, then you get a free one-shot mining hit to the next crystal that will mine the whole thing in one hit. What sucks about this is that shooting the crystals actually breaks them faster, but you don't collect anything out of it, so you're forced to mine. I actively hate mining for crystals in this game, even though you can also get some from killing enemies. Either way, I don't like how empty the maps are, and I don't like there being a phase that is just dedicated to finding weapons and gear. It also doesn't help that I've been playing the finals recently with their new mode that basically adds in Rush from Battlefield to the finals. It's really jarring to go from a game that has maps that are as dynamic and crazy as the finals into something that's a lot more static in Highguard. Also, the finals has better movement and gunplay in my opinion. The game looked super blurry for me. I don't know what they're doing with the anti-aliasing, but it's rough. I've tried all sorts of different options and the game still has this weird blur to it that I can't remove. Hopefully that's something that gets fixed in updates. The game mode itself just doesn't do it for me. It certainly feels like a mishmash of different modes all slammed into one, because that's what it is. It's capture the flag, where you take the flag to the enemy base instead of your own, mixed with search and destroy, and then some TDM elements in the open world. I also hated having to find or buy sets of armor. The way armor works is that if you find a set of armor, you can wear it, but if you die, you lose it, and then you go down to a lower tier of armor. This can happen all the way down to white armor, which is crap. So in order to stay in the higher tier armor, you have to find or buy multiple sets of that armor so that it stores the extra. So for example, if you want purple armor, you have to buy or find a set of purple armor. Once you do, you'll wear it, and if you take damage, your health and armor will regenerate over time as long as you are alive. If you die, you'll lose your purple armor and drop back down to blue armor unless you have an extra set of purple in your inventory. It seems you can carry as much armor as you like, but if you die a lot and aren't replacing what you lost, you'll eventually drop back down to blue, then maybe even white armor. This punishes teams that have players who die frequently. Those players have to keep investing their money into armor in order to keep up with the other player's health and shield. It's a cascading effect of failure for players who are getting dunked on. I don't really like this because it means that those players will always be behind unless they can somehow get a windfall of money. Armor is the only thing you lose when you die. I don't recall ever seeing a weapon drop on death other than the LMG and shield breaker. The penalty for death shouldn't be losing your armor because the penalties for death in this game are already pretty severe. The respawn timers are a decent length. There are multiple one life or limited respawn circumstances, and if you're dying a lot on defense, well, you'll just end up losing the game. The armor thing isn't a huge deal breaker or anything, but it kind of just adds insult to injury. And there is actually like an amulet trinket thing you can equip if you find it. Anyway, it's random chance, but if you find it, it will actually keep your armor when you die, so you won't lose your armor. For me, I did well in most of my games, but I had a few that were pretty rough. I'm not sure how matchmaking works in terms of whether it's skill-based or not, but I never really felt any sort of thrilling highs like in other games. Either I was getting stomped or I was doing the stomping, so that would almost indicate a more open matchmaking, I think. Speaking of, the servers were pretty bad for some people. I didn't have too many issues, but other people were having issues connecting to games. If the matchmaking couldn't find one person, it would kick you back to the lobby instead of continuing to search. I had this happen multiple times where I spent maybe 10 minutes trying to find a match. Not to mention people disconnecting in the matches, and then people just straight up leaving if they lost the first sets of engagement because there's nothing there to penalize anybody. And those players don't get replaced either when they leave. A lot of people are complaining about performance, even on super high-end hardware. Personally, I didn't have a single issue with performance outside of everything looking blurry, and I don't have the highest end stuff. I'm running an i7 13700K, 64 gigs of RAM, and I'm also running a 4070, and I was still able to get 120 FPS at 1440p, medium settings, ran perfectly fine for me. So that's just me. I did have an issue in my very first game where I was getting demolished because I had no clue what was going on, and the spawns were just unavailable except for one. So we got spawn camped over and over. That could come down to base design though, and maybe enemies were near the spawn so it won't let you spawn there, but they were literally spawn trapping us. There's also an issue where the shield breaker got stuck in a mountain. I don't know if that player left or somehow glitched into a rock or what, but it couldn't move and no one could get to it. Okay, that's all that I really didn't like about Highguard, but there are some things that I'm more neutral on, so I'll list them here in every item has a rarity from gray to gold, and I think I've even seen a pink one for the LMG. All rarity does is upgrade the weapon stats. I don't think damage is upgraded in terms of raw damage output, but things like ammo capacity, reload speed, fire rate, those are things that can increase with the rarer versions of the weapon. So while damage per bullet doesn't go up, the overall DPS can. It's an okay system, but it really means that you have to make the most of your looting while in the looting phase. Rarities are also gated by how much time has been spent in the game. You'll start out with whites, then move to blue, but if you survive the first raid phase and maybe even a little bit before, then the rarities will start to go to purple. If you survive that next raid phase and the game hasn't ended, then you'll go to gold, with the announcer even making a little statement about higher rarity loot dropping. Since I don't care for the looting phase of the game, I'm not super enthralled with this system. One thing I noticed a lot of people doing was just hard rushing the main core instead of going for A or B, because why go for the side objectives when you can just take on the main one? That was also something that I did as well in a few games that made them go by very quickly. I guess you could argue that it's harder to go for the main core because it's a lot farther away, and while that's true, I still saw a lot of teams just hard rush the anchor core. Audio was a bit of an issue for me. Overall, it works fine, most everything sounds great, but a lot of the issues I had were with the footstep audio. If someone is on a mount, I could hear them from what felt like hundreds of meters away, but if they're on foot, I might not hear them at all. I've had people make zero noise while full sprinting at me, and I've also had people make all the noise while sprinting at me. Directional audio is pretty rough too. I could hear the direction the enemy might be, but not how close or even the height of the enemy. It was all over the place. The characters are kind of lame. Even from the trailer, I said that they seem like the most generic and safe designs ever. They aren't heinous like with Concord, but there's nothing here that really makes me want to play a specific character. Some of the skins are alright, but I'm not paying money for that. I remember there being a portion near the end of the trailer where one of the guys does his ultimate, and all he does is blow up walls. When he comes out of the ultimate, he reloads his gun as if it's some big action scene. That's it. You did all that to blow up some wood and reload. How lame. Imagine my surprise when in fact that's actually what his ultimate is supposed to do. It's listed as an ultimate that's used to destroy walls and also damage players. But the walls are listed first and foremost, so you know which one is more important. And that goes for a few other characters who seemingly have some pretty lame abilities. The main guy from the trailer, Atticus, has a passive that lets him throw his axe and blow it up with electricity so that he can mine crystals faster. You all wasted an ability slot, a passive ability slot for mining. The worst part of the game. It doesn't say anything about throwing it at a person and doing more damage to them, which he does in the trailer.
I fight to the end.
I get that blowing up walls and mining are important parts of the game, but we've already got a ton of other ways to deal with the walls. You didn't have to make the character abilities lame as well. On top of that, the general art direction of the game is pretty bland. I don't hate the maps and some of the design, but everything feels so safe and corporate. I'm not out here asking for gooner material, far from it. I just want something that has a little bit of edge to it. The edgiest thing in the game is the Dommy Mommy with the stupid haircut and the Mrs. Incredible butt who shoots tendrils out of her arms, but only to trap the souls of her enemies so she can charge her overshield ability. That's all it does. You see what I mean? It's so safe. You can't even stab people to death with her tendril arms. Please, let me use the tendrils to rip a dude in half bone tomahawk style. I mean, there aren't even any dead bodies on the ground. You kill a person, they turn into a floating red orb. Anyway, to wrap it all up, Highguard is an okay game. It has some very okay things in it with a mode that's just okay. Is it as bad as Concord? Well, removing the mystery and the weird hype around it, I don't think so. It's not charging $40, the characters aren't actively atrocious, and I thought the game felt better to play. It also seems to look like the marketing trick of say nothing, show nothing worked because their peak players on the first day was 139 times higher than Concord, so put that as a win. I know some people would disagree with that, but hey, that's okay. You're entitled to your opinion, even if you're wrong. With that being said, I think I've put more content into this review than was put into Highguard, so I'll see you all next time.